Echoes of light. The cafe buzzes softly around me, a cocoon of warmth in an otherwise cold night. Each flicker of the overhead light dances against the walls, casting shadows that seem to meld with the patrons sitting in their own little worlds. Yet here I am, caught in a moment, in between the worlds of the living and the spectral. Greta, with her charming smile and ghostly presence, has become my confidant, the one who draws out my stories as if they're secrets deeply buried within me. She doesn't see the panic rising within, the suffocating tension that roots itself in my chest. I've been escaping from the noise of home, the voice of my parents, filled with their worries and demands, a place where I feel invisible despite being physically present. My gaze shifts back to my screen, the blinking cursor waiting for the next line of my story. Love Story isn't just a title, it's a reflection of my most secret longing, a desire for connection, for something real, amidst the darkness. Within the story I weave, the girl and the ghost find solace in one another, as I find solace in Greta. Yet, as much as the tale may unfold beautifully, beneath the surface lurks the inevitable conflict, the unanswered questions, the unresolved pain. You haven't told me what the conflict is yet, Luce. Greta's voice rings clear, pulling me from my thoughts. Her enthusiasm is genuine, her eyes sparkling with the possibility of where the story might lead. I promise, I have it planned. I reply, though in truth, I dread where it will go. Conflict means heartbreak, and in my life, there's already too much of that, too many shadows, too many echoes of despair. As the night passes and dawn approaches, the music in the cafe shifts to an unconscious harmony, merging with the rustle of chairs and the soft clinking of cups. I catch sight of Greta's hands, her delicate fingers brushing against the counter as she prepares my coffee. Every moment shared with her feels precious, like drops of sunlight breaking through an overcast sky. I want to hold onto it, cherish it, yet still, the reality looms. How can I connect my world to hers when she is a specter of the past? Why do you write about sadness? She asks suddenly, her tone earnest as she returns with my coffee, the steam swirling up around our heads to mingle with the soft morning light. I ponder, letting the warmth of the cup seep into my hands. I guess it feels more honest to me. Happy endings can feel unreal sometimes. Doesn't everyone deserve a happy ending? She counters, tilting her head slightly, a gesture that stirs something deep within me. The vulnerability in her question stabs at my heart. Perhaps she's right, yet I can't help but think that happy endings are often just illusions, a way to mask the pain that life inevitably brings. Yeah, I reply softly, but what if it's all just a dream? What if we wake up one day and realize we've lost everything? That's why stories matter, she says, her eyes locking onto mine, fierce yet tender. They help us understand ourselves. Maybe the girl will learn something from the ghost, even if their story ends in sadness. Maybe she'll learn to cherish the moments they had together, I add, feeling the story of them intertwined with my own feelings toward her, my own fears of loss, and the bittersweet knowledge that whatever this is, it can't last forever. The dawning sun casts golden rays through the window, illuminating the fading scars of the night. I realize that for all the folklore and fantasy I've spun in my mind, reality has a way of creeping in like a cold draft in a closed room. I chart a path toward the inevitable, where Greta will one day be nothing more than a memory, a beautiful specter of a friendship carved by loneliness and longing. And then, she reaches for my hand, her touch lingering on my palm, a heartbeat too long. In that instant, time seems suspended, and all the fears of what will happen next fade away. Here and now, she is alive, as are we both in this space we've created, two souls finding shelter amidst chaos. As the first light of dawn breaks, I whisper into the warm air, I think love might just be learning to hold on, no matter how fleeting. Greta, nodding, her expression serious yet bright, seems to understand the weight of my confession. Maybe she senses the truth behind my words, that the lie we weave about permanence in a world of impermanence is sometimes our only grasp at hope. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for now. In the hazy light, as the cafe starts to fill again with the faithful few, I realize that no matter what lies ahead, whether it be heartache or healing, joy or sorrow, our stories need not end tragically. They will live on within us, echoing through the moments that shape who we are. Maybe, just maybe, the ghost will teach her that love is more about the journey and less about the destination. And in that, perhaps, there will be a happy ending after all. Greta's fingers lingered on mine for a moment longer, her warmth radiating a sense of comfort that I didn't want to let go of. I had never thought much about love. It felt like a concept I could only observe from a distance, like a painting behind a glass wall, beautiful yet untouchable. But here, in the soft glow of dawn, with Greta beside me, it felt tangible in a way I had never experienced before. "Tell me more about the ghost," she urged, her eyes brightening, drawing my focus like a moth to a flame. "What does she want?" I sipped my coffee, savoring the rich, smoky flavor that chased away the remnants of my fatigue. "The ghost," I began, searching for the right words to articulate the depths of her desire. "She wants to remember. She's trapped between worlds, caught in this limbo. Every time she forms a connection with the girl, it brings her back to life, even if it's just for a moment. Like you and me." Greta leaned in closer, her breath brushing against my cheek, sending my heart racing. "Yes," I breathed, realizing that I was weaving two narratives, the one of my story and the reality we were creating together. "It's really about the connections we make. The ghost wants to teach the girl that love can transcend boundaries, that even when people are gone, their impact remains." Greta's eyes sparkled as she listened, her head cocked slightly, mimicking the enthusiasm of a child hearing a bedtime story. "And what does the girl learn?" "That love isn't just about possessing someone or being together forever, it's about cherishing the time you have. Even if it's fleeting, it still matters." "Beautiful," she whispered, leaning back in her chair, and even though her expression was serene, there was a hint of something deeper, an understanding that resonated between us like an unbreakable thread. As the cafe began to fill with customers, the chatter and laughter of morning life enveloped us. Regulars shuffled in, some waving at Greta with nods of respect and familiarity, while others seemed oblivious to her presence, lost in their own routines. "Do you think you will ever find a way to give your characters a happy ending?" Greta asked, her intrigue evident. "Honestly." I looked down, shifting my fingers nervously over the keyboard. "I'm scared that if I write happy endings, it'll mean I'm lying to myself. It feels safer to embrace the sad endings, like they're more real." "Even if the truth is painful?" she asked, her voice low yet steady. "Especially then," I admitted, allowing the vulnerability to surface. "But in writing about sadness, I also write about hope. Maybe acceptance. Maybe learning to let go. So even if the ending isn't what people expect, it becomes something meaningful." She nodded thoughtfully, and for the briefest of moments, I felt as though we were both clinging to the fragile concept that our lives, like stories, could be multifaceted, where joy mingled with sorrow, and both were valid. "Then maybe next time, try writing a story with some hope, something that shows how darkness can lead to light," she suggested, her eyes searching mine for understanding. I felt a twinge of doubt. But can I really do that? What if it doesn't come out true? True isn't absolute. She smiled softly, and in that smile, I saw the flicker of something unspoken, a desire for connection, a wish for understanding. Sometimes, the most impactful stories are the ones that resonate regardless of the outcome. It's about the journey, Luce. It's about how you grow from it. Her words settled around us like warm sunlight breaking through clouds, and suddenly the cafe didn't feel so heavy, the air wasn't so thick with unspoken fears. It felt like a space of possibilities, and maybe, just maybe, she was right. As we sat in companionable silence, I took a moment to watch her, studying the way the light threaded through her hair, the way her smile altered the contours of her face. She was not a ghost to me anymore, just a girl who had brought color to my grayscale world, someone who reminded me that life was still worth experiencing, no matter how complicated or tragic it could be. "Do you think we'll always have this?" I asked suddenly, the question escaping my lips before I could retract it. "Have what?" she replied, her tone curious. "This, whatever this is," I gestured between us, unsure of how to articulate the tangle of feelings swelling in my chest. Her gaze softened, and for a moment, I feared she'd retreat into the shadows, but instead, she leaned in closer. "I think we can have it as long as we allow ourselves to hold on to the moments." Just like the girl and the ghost, right? We're just two souls finding significance in our paths, living out our stories, even if it feels transient. I felt a rush of warmth at her words, a sweet ache blooming within. Then let's promise to share our stories, through every twist and turn, I said, heart racing. Promise, she said, her voice steady and reassuring. The sun was fully up now, casting a golden hue over the cafe, and painting our little world in soft light. I wanted this moment to last forever, to suspend it against the backdrop of my racing thoughts. But as I watched her, I felt an odd sense of quietude, a realization that maybe we didn't need forever, we just needed now. And with that promise, we continued our conversation, spirit intertwining with spirit, unearthing layers of our tales, letting hope breathe life into the characters we created. Maybe the girl in my story would find a happy ending, changing my own narrative along the way. And under the watchful eyes of her pretty ghost, I could finally begin to see my path too, one filled with storms, but also with light, laughter, and moments that etched themselves into memory. As we shared dreams and fears over steaming mugs of coffee, the world outside rushed on, unaware that within the walls of that little cafe, two souls were charting a course toward their own version of a happy ending, one pen stroke, one heartbeat at a time. The air inside the cafe filled with an aromatic blend of coffee and warm pastries, mingling with laughter and the comforting murmur of morning chatter. I felt a sense of protection within these walls, as though the world outside could not touch us, could not intrude on the fragile world we were crafting together. As Greta and I continued to share our thoughts, I noticed the other patrons, some huddled over laptops, others exchanging greetings. Each of them, like us, seemed to be captured in their own stories, their own struggles. I pondered the notion that within the chaos of life, everyone was seeking connection, understanding, and perhaps even a slice of hope. Do you think they notice us? I mused, gesturing toward the few people seated at the tables nearby. Greta chuckled lightly, stirring the remnants of her coffee as she looked around. I doubt it. They're probably too absorbed in their own lives to notice anything outside their bubble. A small part of me felt a pang of envy at that thought. To be so lost in your world, so consumed by the mundane, must offer some comfort. Or perhaps I was merely romanticizing their reality. After all, I was sitting in a cafe with a ghost. And what about us? Are we a part of their world? I asked, intrigued. Maybe we're part of a different one, she replied, her eyes shimmering with insight. We exist in the spaces between, caught between past and present, alive but also different. I nodded, contemplating the depth of her words. There was an exhilarating sense of freedom in our separation from the obligations and expectations of life. And yet, it was starkly contrasted by the loneliness underlying it all. But does it have to be lonely? This in-between place? Greta leaned back, her expression turning serious for a moment. That depends. It can be lonely, but it can also be a refuge, a chance to discover who we truly are. The weight of her words hung in the air, resonating with the myriad of questions I had hidden deep within myself. Do you ever feel scared of fading away? Just disappearing? Her brow furrowed slightly, and I felt a rush of vulnerability flood through me, as though I had peeled back a layer that I wasn't quite ready to show. The truth was that the thought of vanishing terrified me, and the reality that she could just be gone after one last laugh filled me with an inexplicable heaviness. Greta looked straight at me, her gaze unyielding. I think we all fear disappearing in some way. Whether it's fading from people's memories or losing what makes us unique. But maybe that's why stories matter so much, to preserve those we care about, to immortalize our moments. Preserve? I echoed, feeling hopeful. Exactly. Sharing our stories keeps us alive in the memories of others. Just like the girl and the ghost, even if the ghost fades away, she will always be a part of the girl's life. She will carry her lessons and love with her. As she spoke, the cafe around us seemed to blur, leaving just the two of us in a world suspended in time. There was something magical about that notion, the idea that love, in any form, could withstand the constraints of life and death. Then can we promise to tell our stories to each other? No matter what. I proposed, feeling the passion brimming within me. I promise, she said softly, holding my gaze as if sealing the pact. And maybe one day, we can write our own story together. Yeah, I whispered, my heart racing at the possibility. A story about two souls finding their place in the world, learning to break through the darkness and into the light. As we spoke of dreams and futures, of ghosts and girls, a new energy filled the air, an exhilarating sense of possibility. Suddenly, I realized that perhaps Greta wasn't just a guiding spirit in a fantasy. She was a mirror reflecting my own aspirations, a reminder that love and hope could exist even when faced with the specter of loss. The world beyond the cafe began to fade, the hum of everyday life dulling into a soft buzz as I immersed myself deeper into the conversation. Yet, despite our shared connection, a part of me could feel the clock ticking, our limited time slipping away like sand through my fingers. And then, just like that, the moment shifted. There was an undeniable weight in the atmosphere, a predetermining silence. Greta's expression became solemn, her brow furrowing as she gazed at the door, barely beginning to open. In walked a familiar figure, my mother, searching the room with furrowed brows, her eyes scanning the tables with desperation. "Luce," she called, her voice cutting through the tranquil bubble we had created. Panic bubbled up in my chest as I turned towards Greta. I can't face her right now. Do you want me to disappear?" Greta asked, a hint of playfulness returning to her voice, but the gravity of the situation remained palpable. "No," I whispered fiercely, blinking back the sudden surge of tears. "I just wish I had more time, to talk, to understand everything too. Then let's make the most of it." Greta reached for my hand, squeezing it reassuringly, reminding me that I wasn't alone. "Be brave, Luce." As my mother approached, anxiety coursed through me, a tidal wave crashing against the fragile moments I had just experienced. I felt myself withdrawing, retreating into the safety of the familiar, where the fear of facing life again loomed just outside. "Luce, there you are," my mother exclaimed. Relief washed over her face, mingling with irritation. "I've been worried sick. You can't just wander off like this." The voice of reprimand sent waves of guilt cascading through me. "Mom, Don't just me," she interrupted. "You're not a child anymore, and your father and I have been searching everywhere. We thought something happened to you." I shifted my gaze back to Greta, my sanctuary, my protector, who remained seated, her eyes filled with sympathy and understanding. I realized in that moment that I also held a choice, to step back into my old life and confront the complexities of my family, or to embrace the interlude I had found with Greta. "Mom, I'm okay," I said firmly, taking in a breath deeper than the last. I needed time to think. To gather my thoughts. Time away from us. From your family. "We care about you, Luce," she replied, her voice tremulous, a mix of relief and frustration. My heart ached at her concern, but the truth rested heavily on my shoulders. I care too. But it's not just about you and Dad, it's about me finding my place in this world. "What are you talking about?" my mother pressed, her brow furrowing deeper. She stood before me, arms crossed, searching for answers. "We can talk about this later," I replied, my voice steadier, feeling Greta's unwavering support beside me. "But I need you to understand that I'm not the same girl you thought you knew. I'm learning about who I am, and I can't do that if I'm always under pressure to be what you want me to be." My mother fell silent, the weight of my words settling over both of us like the morning light filtering through the cafe window. It was a moment of confrontation, a fissure in the familiar roles we had both grown accustomed to. The silence allowed the realization to unfurl, the understanding that this wasn't merely about my absence. It was about reclaiming my identity and recognizing the voices that had guided me through the darkness. And now, standing here, a flicker of hope ignited within me. I felt a compulsion to fight for both my reality and my story, not just for myself, but for those I loved, including Greta, whose presence had opened a door I had never dared to walk through. "Luce," my mother began again, her tone softening, "I didn't realize you felt this way. Can we talk?" Before I could respond, I turned to Greta, whose eyes sparkled with encouragement. It was as if she was nudging me forward, urging me to embrace this confrontation, to allow my story to unfold in all its messy complexity. "Let's talk," I replied, feeling resolute as I faced my mother, ready to share the journey I had been on, ready to explore my fears and hopes. As I spoke with her, I could feel a warmth washing over me, a connection merging past and present. And as the cafe came alive around us, I felt the strength of our shared stories, both hers and mine. At that moment, I understood that love wasn't just about preventing loss, it was about embracing the journey with all its darkness and light. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a new chapter, a story still being written, one where ghosts could offer lessons and human connections could lead to healing. I glanced at Greta one last time, and in that look, I sensed a promise, a silent agreement that our stories wouldn't end here. They would continue to weave together, crossing paths in ways I could scarcely imagine. It was in this blend of the familiar and the unknown that we would truly find our voices, crafting a tale brimming with love, loss, and irrevocable hope.